It began with an aura of controversy, disagreement, even personal animosity.
In California, we spend a lot of time arguing about who water matters to the most.
There's only so much water to go around, so there was big concerns.
There was a lot of consternation between the environmental communities and Yuba County Water Agency, and people were fighting a lot.
It took a couple of decades for people to come together. And there were times when it completely fell apart and everybody was yelling and screaming at each other, but they had the resolve to come back together.
Everybody was in the room to make the Yuba River better.
The Yuba Accord is a historic agreement. It's an important one for us because it showed people coming together to triumph over fighting as usual in the water world.
The Yuba Accord can best be described as a win-win-win.
So the Yuba is a special place. It's one of the remaining wild fisheries for really important salmon runs without a big hatchery influence.
There was a complaint that was filed with the State Water Resources Control Board that said the flow requirements in the Yuba River by YCWA or for YCWA weren't protective enough of the fishery.
Of the stressors that were identified, the primary stressor was water temperature in the lower Yuba River, first and foremost affecting virtually every life stage.
From the water agency perspective, it was a matter of water reliability, maintaining that for our customers.
And Yuba County Water Agency decided that they needed to take charge and actually solve this problem. Then they brought all the parties together.
Eventually you're going to come to a roadblock, and when we'd come to a roadblock, Ryan would invite all of us out to the Davis Wildlife Center and say, on a Saturday, we're going to work through this until we find a path forward.
We did Saturday meetings at the wildlife area. I brought donuts, and we hammered it out piece by piece.
Basically parts of a three-legged stool. The first leg, Fisheries Agreement with non-government organizations and fishery groups, was a better way to protect fish on the Yuba River.
The Accord tried to create a scientifically rigorous structure to figure out how much water in which places, at what temperature, at what times of the year.
The second part was the need to incorporate groundwater pumping into what we call a conjunctive use program, where you take groundwater and put it in the system in a way that provides more water to the system as a whole.
When a drought comes, you can have additional groundwater pumping. You've been planning for that, so you've been storing the groundwater, and that allows farmers to access that water and leave more water in the river, which is great for the fish. And then there's an added benefit to other water users in the state, because once the water comes through the system, it can get picked up again downstream and benefit other communities that are also facing shortages because of droughts.
And what Yuba County Water Agency would do as a third leg of the stool was to do a water transfer program with some of that water.
A market has developed so that agencies that have water will make it available to agencies that have a greater demand than they can meet with their traditional sources.
We ought to reject those propositions which are fish versus farmer, people versus the environment. We can do both. There's a way to do an environmental benefit and an economic benefit. They're not mutually exclusive.
I thought we got to a point where this is far superior to another 10 or 20 years in court, so we were able to get the Fisheries Agreement done.
Water temperatures in the lower Yuba River are cooler than in most, if not all, other Central Valley streams. Whether it's dry or wet, hot or cold, the Accord was designed to provide benefits under all circumstances.
They had 2 trial years before we amended the water right was critical to me, and the fact that there's an ongoing collaborative process with the university and environmental groups after the Accord was signed, I think is important, because they're still trying to make it better. It wasn't like there was one conclusion that was chiseled in stone and everybody had to live with it. The fact that it was living was important.
Folks didn't just make a one-time agreement, they agreed to a partnership to figure out how to make things work, to share the science.
To me, the model shows promise for continuing as a longer-term way to manage our water resources, and different ways of approaching things for wet years and dry years, and preparing for the dry years by storing extra water in the ground during the wet years, which has turned out to be really valuable. We saw this during the latest drought, the 2012 to 2016 drought, where this was one of the few watersheds that really had a game plan.
Over the course of the last 10 years, the Yuba Accord has produced in excess of 800,000 acre-feet of water for public water agencies south of the Delta that are party to the Water Purchase Agreement. On an annual basis, that's enough water to supply more than 150,000 households in Southern California. It's enough water to irrigate 40,000 acres of land in the San Joaquin Valley.
This water that we got in 2015 with the 5% allocation, it was really helpful in allowing us a little more water to get to those areas in our service area that otherwise we would have had pretty severe cutbacks. This kind of saved our bacon in a lot of ways.
Some of that water is transferable, and they could make resources available then to help pay for the stuff that Yuba County wanted to get done, both for the environment and for their levee program.
We're a small county of 75,000 people, and we've currently finished off about $450 million worth of levee repair. We're currently doing grants to many different agencies within our county.
We've converted 63 diesel pumps to electric pumps, and that has saved in a pumping year 550,000 gallons of fossil fuel, and that eliminates about 6,000 tons of greenhouse gas emissions in a year.
Being a farmer myself, having a consistent water supply in Yuba County is critical because those people produce food that people eat all over the world.
So it quantified things, and it put things under a schedule. There were scheduled years. You were going to know certain years there's going to be a certain amount of water, and other schedules there might be less.
Having water to maintain a rice crop, and then to help decompose the rice after harvest, which is when the birds use it primarily, is really fundamental to the Pacific Flyway, not just to California or the Sac Valley. Plus, for all those folks that really like to spend third Saturday in October through the third Saturday in January on average, in a duck blind, they have a very sustainable and a quality of water and quantity of water that makes for optimum habitat. When all is said and done and the tens of thousands of pages are read, it boils down to doing something.
It's amazing because it represented a true interest-based negotiation. So to be able to begin from a controversial, adversarial perspective to one of collaboration is an accomplishment that is only too rare. And it represents a unique and wonderful conclusion.
10 years, I think, proves durability here. I think the extra ingredient, if you're willing to help the other party meet its interests, so long as they're willing to help you meet your interests, you can get a lot of stuff done in California, and I think the Accord is kind of an example of that.
The concept is so critical to bring people together and let them hash out their differences instead of doing it in a courtroom. I don't think a courtroom is a productive way to have a resolution.
I think collaboration is the only way we make it, frankly. I mean, I think otherwise just politicians, lobbyists, and lawyers do very well over discord and fragmentation and driving us apart.
To anyone who might be watching, don't lose hope. Some of this water stuff feels like it's 100 years to resolve a dispute. And in the middle of all that stuff, which will sap the energy out of you, it really is literally possible to sit down with people that you previously fought with and do something that's good for each other and good for California.